So we are in week 4 now. I just want to say, just like last week, there might be a little bit of noise in the background because my daughter, the only day of the week she's ever around is when she does choir practice here with her one of her jobs. Anyways, you might hear some voices and singing outside these walls. Let's see. What was I going to say? Okay, yeah. So first of all, I want to just address a few things that I saw in the notes and discussions about Egypt and Christianity. So there was some confusion a lot of you had about Alexander the Great's, bringing Christianity to Egypt. That's not the case because he was several hundred years before Jesus. And then the question of how much influence did Egypt have on Christianity? Now, I just wanted to point out something. I had you guys watch that clip of the Egyptian Coptic Church, and so there's no doubt that Egypt has a tremendous influence on the early stages of Christianity. And even if we, put aside some of the practices of ancient Egypt and the similarities in the Ankh and the Isis, the depiction of the goddess with the baby child, like you have with Mary and Jesus. Even if we take that aside, people like Saint Anthony, if you remember, the concept of monasticism that's going to be important in Western Christianity comes from an Egyptian a spiritual thinker, right? And the patriarchs of Egypt are going to have a tremendous influence. But the Coptic Church is trying to pitch itself as the real church, in the way that the Roman Catholic Church tries to portray itself as the real church and the real origins. And the Syrian Orthodox does the same. And I guess what I want to mention is that, first of all, for those of us who are secular historians that are not a part of that debate, or that kind of walk outside of it, there's no proof that St. Mark actually went to Egypt. That is a church tradition. It is completely probable. I'm just simply saying that from a historian's point of view, what I always try to mention to people is that the early stages of Christianity are hard. I mean, that's the first several centuries are really hard to pin down from a hard historical point of view. But we have many, many traditions that come out of this, right? So, they could be true. But just for example, if you meet an Assyrian Christian from the Church of the East, they say, hey, we speak the language of Jesus, and they emphasize the fact that they are speaking an Aramaic tongue that's similar to Jesus, and often like to think of themselves as the real heirs to Christianity. The Syrian Orthodox Church reminds everyone that in the book of Acts, that the very term Christian first originates in Antioch, which is in Syria right now. Syria, as in, where the civil war is and the Syrian refugees, that location is, according to the book of Acts in the New Testament, where the origin of the idea of being called Christian comes from. Okay? And so they emphasize that legacy. Roman Catholicism talks about Peter being the foundation of the church and the start of their church, who was the apostle directly linked to Jesus. And then, of course, we saw how the Coptic Egyptian church emphasized their influence. So what I'm saying is, you can see how each church is emphasizing the importance of their historic links to the development of Christianity. That's just something that I wanted to point out, okay? And that those things can get a little debated, and they have been a part of theological debates, even though the question is that really theological? But anyways, we're moving on from that. Going into this section, this is our cram course week. So remember, we are a late start, which I already told you I wish we didn't have to do that, but here it is. So we're doing a 2 weeks in one this week. So you need to buckle down. Now, this is a very interesting week, though. I cover ancient Israel, and then we do Judaism. And I make it clear that those are two separate things, but they have a historical connection. And so I feel that you will really, for those of you who grew up in a Jewish or a Christian background, this will really be a kind of helpful recap of your knowledge. If you're a Muslim, you have an Islamic background, you'll really get a strong understanding of the base of your religious cultural heritage as well. And if you did not grow up exposed to these ideas, this should help ground you in a history that is so influential on so much of the world, whether you think it should be or not. Okay, that is, and you will just walk away really with a great, strong understanding of this. I can't emphasize that enough. And so then there's one last thing I'll say on that. Like the section I had on evolution, though, that bothered some of my friends, certain students that are not comfortable with that topic. And as I mentioned, you don't have to believe in that. In this section on ancient Israel, historians do question certain historical. They question some of the stories of the Bible as to regard them being real history or not. And they do this not to target, to destroy, not as an attack on religion, but because that's just what historians do to all stories. And this is a little bit rough for if you're a person of faith. I again point out to people, you don't have to believe anything, you just have to understand it. So the one thing that will be addressed the most is the question of the book of Joshua, which I'm named after by my religious parents. Most historians don't believe that the conquest of Canaan, as told in there, is actually really what happened. Now, of course, none of us went back in time, and there's a reason why they make that argument. Most of your pastors and Christian theologians and rabbis are familiar with this debate because it's so pervasive. So, I think that you should at least see it as kind of giving you a chance to see about how what a consensus view is from historians on this. And keep in mind that despite this, these Christians and Jewish rabbis are still believers, and some even believe in the historical criticism while believing that it's still spiritually true. Now, I'm not here to encourage one perspective on that or the other. I'm just kind of drawing attention to something that might be a little more controversial to some of you that have a more personal investment in the topic. Okay? So, if you have any questions on this, please let me know. But I do ultimately, again, think you'll find this enjoyable. And give me a call if you have any other questions for the rest of the week.